Hello everyone. In this session we want to add the skill point system. So previously we collected experience and now we want to use this. So every time that the experience gets to some level, it's at the skill point and we can use that as skill point to, for example, increase the speed of the player or increase its damage. So here are the icons we need. First, make a button to open the skill tree panel. Assign the icon to it and adjust its size properly. In the player XP script, we add variables for the number of skill points, how much we want to increase walk speed, how much we want to increase attack power. Because we are going to use these values in other classes, we make them public. When the player levels up, one skill point is added. Next, we create two functions, one for increasing movement speed, one for increasing attack power. If the player has no skill points, nothing should happen. In the speed upgrade function, we want to change the walking or running speed inside the player movement script, so we need to reference that class here. First, we store the base speed, which is equal to the player's normal speed. The new speed is calculated as a percentage of the base speed, for example, 0.02, which means 2%. So every time the skill is upgraded, the player's speed increases by 2% of the base speed. Because we previously stored the base speed, we can always calculate the new value correctly instead of stacking errors. We also need this base speed value when the game starts, so we assign it inside the awake function. We apply the same logic for increasing attack power. We get a sword damage from the inventory manager based on which sword the player currently has equipped. To apply the new damage value, we need to reference the player attack script. We calculate the final damage and then pass it to the player attack sword damage variable. For now, we'll leave the code here and move on to create the skill tree panel. Inside the skill tree panel, we add the text to display how many skill points the player has. We add two buttons, one for speed and one for attack power. We also add a text for each skill to show how many times it has been upgraded. Finally, we add a close button to close the panel. Now let's write a script to manage opening and closing the skill tree panel. We assign the open and close function to the corresponding buttons. Good. Because execution order is important, I assign the base speed in the awake function and I show the upgrade values in the start function so the values exist before being read. By the way, if you see the scene shaking like this, it means the game is lagging really badly. I intentionally didn't optimize the game yet because later I want to show you step by step how to optimize it. Now let's assign the text that shows how many times each skill has been upgraded. At the beginning, both values are 0. Each time a skill is upgraded, the value increases by 1. We display these values in the start function and every time a skill is upgraded. Since the load function is also involved, we add the same UI updates there as well. We do the same thing for the skill point text. Now let's work on the plus button used for upgrading skills. First, we check if the player has any available skill points. If yes, the plus buttons should be intractable. If not, they should be disabled. We upgrade this logic. On level up and after upgrading a skill. We assign the buttons in the inspector. We create separate upgrade functions so each button can be assigned to its own on-click event. Don't forget to decrease the skill point count when a skill is upgraded. I also rearranged some code placement to prevent bugs. I reset the save file to default values and test the game again. There is a problem. Because we multiply values by 2% or 0.02, we expect decimal numbers. So we must change all related variables from int to float for speed and attack power. Now the system accepts decimal values. I also moved the load function to the start function. It works, but there's another issue. When the player attacks, the movement speed returns to the base value. The reason is that earlier we told the player to stop moving while attacking and then return to the base speed afterward. To fix this, we load the player's saved data and add saved bonus speed on top of the base speed. Now the movement speed works correctly and the sword damage also applies properly. Thanks for watching.